This may end up being a difficult stream to do, so I'm going to try and break this down in a manner that is explaining of what I'm talking about. So, a little while back, there was a user who felt the need to respond back to my claim about how the model of people currently dating is a failure, at least in the black community, because you have um, 7/10 of all children, at the very least, the number's slightly higher than that in some reports, being born to single mother households, which I argued would entail that the man doesn't want to be with this woman anymore, or the fact that getting married before you jump in bed is something that is conducive to solving the issue of quelling this dilemma. Now, the user argued that there were other factors such as the school to prison pipeline, and it was almost as if you're talking to someone who's just barely on the edge of trying to blame anything and everything but the people who were involved in the circumstance that led to the creation of the child that is going to be in the single household. So, let me say hello to Envoy. Oftentimes, people will talk about when it comes to prisons and just their mass incarceration in the U.S., um, the war on drugs and the three strikes rule. Yeah, VVS, we know. Um, but yeah, we're going to get to that point later on about this whole they're always right thing. So one of the charges levied at the war on drugs was that you had all these people incarcerated for crimes and they didn't that weren't of that level of seriousness. And obviously the three strikes rule, Clinton expanding the prison population, all of these different things that have come into place. And look, I believe that there is a need of reform to be had with the criminal system or just incarceration in the U.S. There are certain crimes that either, if they're still counted as crimes, shouldn't mean going to jail for 10 or 15 or 20 years. Um, but here's my disagreement with both the comment this guy made and also with a lot of liberals. And I'm going to put it as bluntly as I can. No president between the start of the U.S. back in the 1700s to 2018 has had the ability to sign into law legislation which requires you as a woman or you as a man to spread your legs to someone. There's no arguing against that. And they always make it seem as um, if I just change this policy, if I just go and sign this law, because they claim that, okay, well, these types of scenarios are made to happen from legislators and the actual laws. But I guarantee if you go and ask any of these people what exact law was signed to make these men and women who were not in the best of circumstances to have a child get in bed together, people will, either try to deflect the question or they shrug their shoulders. But it's a daunting reality that there is a certain level of accountability people have to have. And look, I always felt the most bad, or at least the person who bore the brunt of my sympathy was the child that's born in these circumstances because they don't play a role in the choices of their parents. So, for example, the 10 or 11-year-old who's living in some impoverished neighborhood is not going to have been able to reverse back time and make his parents wait until they both had funding and were living somewhere of a higher caliber to improve upon his life. But here's the other issue that comes into place. A lot of people say, well, look, the poverty that came from, you know, that circumstance will make the person go out and commit crimes. But there are plenty of people that have lived in bad neighborhoods that have come from impoverished scenarios who aren't doing that. And I guess you get to a point where you just say to yourself, I'm really supposed to feel sympathetic. I mean, look, we've talked about the number of um, violence or crimes against African Americans by other African Americans. It's 9 times out of 10 if a black person is murdered, it's by another black person. And, this is proven by just statistics that we've had for years now. And for that reason, I always kind of said, well, I don't really get that disturbed by these police, shootings. I can admit some of them are unjustified, but it shouldn't be the only, certainly not the core focus, and definitely not what causes you to start marching in the streets when, if I was assaulted or done to me, whatever, by someone of my own ethnicity, there wouldn't be a problem in the eyes of most people who call themselves being activists whenever you see these, police events happening. Really, the only reason those garner the attention that they do is because the media will put them on TV, whereas they're so used to black on black violence, they don't really take it seriously anymore. It's just another day in the news cycle. Um, but you'll have people who actually try to defend, want to live in the matrix, pretty much tracks. But you have people who will try to and look, I don't mind it when someone says there is a problem with this. I will agree there's a problem with, you know, um, incarceration and officers, all of that. But let's be clear, there is no law that makes someone who is from a bad neighborhood fight the police or, you know, commit some crime. And listen, what bugs me is they always try to make it seem as if one party cares about you more than the other. But ask yourself, if the Democrats were so concerned with the plight of, minorities during the war on drugs, where were they to try and reverse any of these policies, or at least make that community privy to what was going on? Ask yourself that. It almost becomes a question no one wants to answer. What were the Democrats doing during this time? I didn't even mean for this to become political, but we have to really stop this idea that supposedly everything wrong that happens to you is the result. And look, I'm not saying again that you can't come from a circumstance someone else caused, but there is no law that makes that creates life in the classical way. As I said earlier in this stream, there's no such thing as the spread your legs act of 1973 that made women and men open their legs to each other in these bad neighborhoods and have these children in undesirable conditions. That doesn't exist, and it never will exist, because your behavior, as far as what you do with the proverbial hands of fate, is the result. Section welfare destroyed the fat. Yeah, we can get into that later. Well, here's my thing, Trex. Trying to catch up. Been away from my laptop. It's fine, Envoy. Here's my thing. I'm going to respond to what Trex is claiming there. The Even if you make the argument that welfare had negative ramifications, it's still the people themselves who chose to use it. Just like how people will say, a lot of these conservatives anyway, and this is where they're hypocritical. They'll argue that the guns aren't the problem, the people are the problem. But you'll say that welfare is the issue of the current era. It can't be both. You can't have it both ways, where suddenly it's okay to have weapons, because the people who are controlling them are the problem. But then, oh no, we have to mess with welfare because the system itself is the problem. You can't have those two things contradicting each other and be from that same ideology of self accountability, and the person's the one who decides. Let me say hello to, I think that's yet cheese. I guess I'm not sure. Hey, that's gonna be the most daunting part of this stream, trying to figure out how to pronounce your name. I'd rather just say cheese for short, and I don't appreciate Envoy's cyberbullying by putting LOL at the end of his comment. So I feel very offended by that. Okay, what else was I going to say here? Um, So there's another part of this I'm trying to think of that bugged me as well, just to where I started. Offended that I'm offended. It doesn't work that way. I can only be offended. I as the streamer, uh, am the only one entitled to feel that way. So anyone else that does is not allowed to. This is the USSR channel. We don't, we don't allow you to express yourself in any way that we don't like. That's kind of actually what they've tried to do with YouTube now, because you have people like, for example, these guys and these females that'll complain about my political positions, and then also, the other talk on here. I said, well, I don't have a problem with you disagreeing, but if you're gonna call someone and, out of their name and start telling me what I can and can't say, you can take that. That ideology should have ended back in '91 when the Soviet Union dissolved. No, I am not responding to heathen. Political correctness is annoying. Well, look, again, these are people who call themselves supporters of the American Constitution and the First Amendment, but I don't see it, because they'll go after someone so viciously for having an opinion that's not the same as theirs. It's kind of amusing. I want to know what Trex is laughing about. What has him so tickled? He's okay. Cheese, it didn't respond if I'm allowed to call them that, or how to pronounce their actual name. So I'm starting to think Cheese is trying to, pull my leg here. So either way, it's pretty. Okay, so it's Yeti Cheese. So I don't know why you couldn't have put I guess the space bar on your computer wasn't working when you made your account, because I was very confused by that. Hey, you know what? We're gonna go back to the no the lack of self accountability thing. So yeah, I was never able to learn to pronounce Yeti Cheese's name because uh, he didn't press the space bar on his account. When people support the Constitution and demonize another person for having a different opinion. Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, that's amusing. Well, it's amusing to have me recount it. It's kind of annoying to have people do it in real life. Um, and the problem I have is a lot of times they just get into this thing where they start like, look, if you have a conversation with someone in real life and they have an opinion that's opposed to yours, but it's still a conversation worth having, they'll either respect that opinion or they'll make a concession on something. So, for example, me and someone today actually disagreed with, because I believe personally there shouldn't be term limits in Congress. So, like in the House and the Senate, I think someone should be able to serve for as long as they are elected. And the other person argued, I don't think that should be the case. And they said, well, look, the person who is elected for however long they can be in there should raise someone up to be their successor. And I argued, I don't mind that, but that's kind of my problem, that people think if you get rid of someone, automatically you're going to get someone better. After in having these hypothetical congressional term limits, when in reality, a lot of times the same person you're replacing it with, uh, is going to take money from the same people to do the same things. Okay, Envoy says, what about for presidency? Oh, 2 terms. Keep it the way it is. I'm fine with that being 8 years. That's enough of one person, in my opinion. Any improvements? No. And we'll leave it at that. That will be the full extent of that inquiry. I love people just randomly coming here asking a question. How tall are you? What is your blood type? What party do you identify with? Oh, I got worried that I thought you would be okay being there for as long as possible. See, okay. I know it's no, Envoy. I think the head of state should only be there for 2 terms, and even then, that's when it comes to other countries, debatable. Um, but yeah, I hate the executive branch having one person term after term after term after term. Look at Russia with Putin, and look at Israel with Netanyahu. Netanyahu, in my opinion, is one of the worst elected officials in modern history. Right? I think you said something of not being for someone because of their blood type and their astro. Yeah, the one that was telling me about the guys from her past having the same blood type, and that was supposedly foreshadowing that it wouldn't work. It's just, are you kidding me? You know, I mean, after a while, I was gonna ask, is being left-handed disqualifying too? If it gets that ridiculous, throw me some slack. Um, the other part of the so I don't like it when because I keep going back to that one commenter that was upset that the stream talked about other things. But in my opinion, when you do a 30 minute, hour long stream, it's hard to just stay on that one topic the entire time. I put my left one on first. Why isn't he? Yeah. Um. So I'm saying that when someone goes back and watches this in a replay, anyone who leaves that comment is probably going to get their post deleted because again, it's hard to stay on one topic for just an extraneous period. Like I'm about to go back to it, but someone will comment, "Why did you go off topic?" No, finally got back on topic, but it took him a while. Just start complaining about that. Uh, okay, so all nine of you. So going back to the lack of self accountability thing. I hope I've defined it in the way I look at it. I think most of the people that are born into circumstances that are are obviously beyond their control. Um, but as far as, oh, I'm gonna have this child with this woman I just met yesterday, or I'm gonna, jump in bed with this guy that doesn't even have a dollar in his pocket. All of that, those are things that you chose to do. And I get so tired when I see people writing this stuff online. Trying to complain, make excuses for someone else being irresponsible when it came to who they chose to engage in that with. Yeah. And look, Trex, you have to understand if I did that, if one day I made a stream and I said, you know, um, I became, it will go something like this. I became so disillusioned to where I saw the first woman walking down the street. We hopped in bed, and she ended up becoming pregnant, and then 10 months later I refused to pay child support because I didn't want this kid. Now she's putting, trying to get me on my, money or whatever. No, none of you are going to feel sorry for me. None of those commenters who, were talking about one day it'll come, true love will appear before you, and it will be a white and blue sun in the sky. No one's going to say that. No one is going to share any level of sympathy with me over that circumstance occurring. I thought the Disney movies were over, personally. As far as quality and all that, to where you just want to go out and watch them. I thought that they'd finished. If you notice, every time they do a sequel to one of the older productions, it usually just gets panned and is so horrible that they have to put it on DVD. Okay, only go top 20%. I've heard that before. I just really want to get off topic here. That the example I gave you is more in line with that thing, that the double standard. Effectively, the only people who really believe in this idea of I'm gonna blame something else for a personal choice that someone I know made are people that know people who are in these scenarios. Like, I guarantee you that a lot of people who left those comments defending, um, for example, these you know, women that are having these children with these guys that aren't involved in the life of the child probably know women that did that same thing. And look, I'm not saying all of them are awful, pieces of whatever, because I don't know the exact circumstances behind every single one of those scenarios. Um, but you have to admit you wouldn't have had that child if you didn't jump into bed willingly with the guy. Blame all the men for or implementing with no response. Yeah, same thing. Um, what else is here? But yeah, going back to VVS, that argument he was making didn't even make sense because if these guys that are bad today came from the household of you know that was only with a woman, how can you blame their dad for that? I don't understand. Whatever. He wasn't there. Well, again, that's the point. He wasn't there, so the person who was there, saw him become this, or didn't do anything to stop it, or if they did, then it didn't work. I already told you personally the I know a lot of you are so sick and tired of um, the current climate where you have people, trying to put down genders entirely. So like with me, I try to say some do this, some do that because I don't know every single um, woman. But personally, I think the best, just my idea of a perfect society would come from a two-parent household with a mother and father who both have some kind of position that they can actually expect to retain for a couple of years. And, they work this Monday through Friday. The child goes to school, or before it goes to school, it goes to, a sitter or whatever. And over the weekend, they hang out with it, or they, try to teach it something. Just give it a level of education that we're not seeing in the current schools at this point. That in my opinion, that would be a better scenario than what we have now, where people will just pump out some kid and then, oh look, let me take a picture with it online. Oh, look at my child. Yeah, yeah. There's a certain guy on YouTube, for example, who will remain nameless, who has a video where I think he titled it, something something. I'm not even gonna give any hints to it. It's people would see it and they'll go, oh, that's so sweet. It's basically just his infant. I think what gender was it? His infant child just staring into the camera, and him going, and then I also know a another user online who had a child last year who just every time you go on their account, picture the kid, picture the kid, picture the kid. Just I don't understand it. They turn them into dolls basically, human dolls. It's the most dehumanizing thing in the world to have people be more concerned with taking a bunch of pictures to randomly post online to strangers than with actually doing anything to put you in a better scenario. The person who had that kid, for example, I know, isn't a college graduate. I know doesn't have a six-figure job. And look, you don't need either one of those things, in my opinion, to be a good parent. But I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is photo shoot, photo shoot, photo shoot. And someone who says, "Oh, you're saying that because you're bitter," that's correct. I'm a sore loser. I think I do a better job. I think most people in the stream will probably do a better job than those two instances I gave there. Because I know I can already pull out my crystal ball and tell that if you go up to either of those two children I described earlier, and wait a second, said we have to jump those when majority we see don't do. Yeah, well, we've already talked about double standards. Trek says talk about the concept of accountability is the equivalent of talking to a wall. And look, that's kind of how I felt with that guy. I was just talking to a wall because look, when people are willing to discuss something, they make concessions. I conceded with the person that didn't like term limits. Okay, yeah, maybe they'll end up well like the great anime. Okay, I'm gonna respond to Envoy in a minute, but I told him, look, I'm not in favor of getting rid of these guys because when you get rid of them, you oftentimes get a person who has the same positions. And he conceded that, but he also said if they truly know when it's their time to leave, they'll have someone else to come up that keeps the same ideas if they're good. Which a lot of people actually have the idea of term limits to go after someone they don't like. But if you don't like the person for their positions and they raise someone up who has the same positions, effectively that was futile. You know, different face, same thing, effectively, or rather. But we can see the points on both sides. That's how you have an actual discussion. That's what can lead to a substantive debate on an issue. This whole thing where I'm talking about, for example, Bernie, and then someone comes in and goes, free college could never happen, could never happen, could never happen. I'm not going to say, look, I don't think it happened because of if you do it this way or that way. They're just going to say, no, the idea could just no way possible. That's not lucrative to a conversation that actually will result in anything positive. Okay, let me respond to Envoy. Let me say hello to MLG Gaming. Well, like the great anime character in my head, Booker T. Kingfish said, these in the world, and there's very little you can do about it. If you show them facts, they'll dispute it. Um, well, let me not say in my head it's an anime me and my friends used to work on. Uh, I agree with that. With it, okay. Dialogue. Okay, Trek says dialogues with subjective thinkers is just pointless. I believe. Okay, MLG is talking about something having to do with time travel, and we've got to stop Cell, whatever. But the point I'm making is I don't know what that has to do with what we're discussing here. But I guess since he figured we're gonna clock out at 30 minutes in, he's trying to get his one disruptive comment in the stream. That's his hallmark. At least some random comment. Um, but yeah, with referring to what VVS said, that's why after a while, um, I just stopped bothering with talking about because there's no attempt at making any level of accountability with the people who are involved in the circumstance. Okay, where do you see they're going to be the same way? Look, in 15 years, computers aren't going to disappear. Um, in 15 years, people aren't going to stop liking what they like. So all of it's going to remain the same. Yeah, VVS said it well. Same, but pretty much worse. I don't know about pretty much worse, but I think it'll stay the same. Okay, MLG Gaming is saying that he is, you know, some prophet of Christ or something. I don't know. All kind of. Is he even watching this stream? I think what's happening is that he's checking out something on television, and he has the volume turned down, and he's just typing some comment in, and because he thinks we're discussing something of biblical proportions, even though I've already talked about how, you know, personally, me and the Bible haven't been getting along in recent years. It's not even the Bible's fault. It's just those people and those fables, but whatever. Um, so I think he's not actually checking the stream out, and I think what he did now was just put his headphones on and hear that last minute. So he's trying to trick me, but it's not working. It's not going over well or swell. So we're getting to the last minute of this. I don't intend for these things to go on for as long as they do, but if you can get a sizable traffic in here, I'd want to address most inquiries or comments that are left. Okay. Don't end. Oh, I'm supposed to just sit here for another hour. What do you guys think about spiritual side of this life? Do you believe that there's something more than only the material side of this world? And that's all right about your English are usually better because it feels and we can't discuss the topic at hand at length. Yeah, but the flip side to that coin is that you have people who will complain about a topic not being just thoroughly spoken of entirely for 30 straight minutes, and I don't care for that. Their complaints rather, or that person's complaints when he did that. The spiritual side, I think that I'd like to believe that there is an afterlife, where you go to heaven and you meet all kind of people that have already been deceased. That's my ideal version. Um, but any other version, if there is any other version, I'll be very disappointed. Um, which some people will say you won't even be able to feel that because there'll just be nothing. But still, um, I'd like to think there's, but we will truly not know. I'm just gonna say this: if reincarnation exists, if you're given the choice of just going to this heavenly paradise versus having some new life, I would rather just stay in the paradise or just stay as dirt because I would hate to do this again. Um, we're talking going through school all over again. We're talking about watching people die all over again. We're talking about not actually just sitting there watching them, but as years go by, that kind of thing. So all of it, and especially being a male trying to play this game where you're getting accused of being a sexual predator and all kind of other charges levied toward you over some women that you know just all of it's bad. I'd rather not do it again. So I have a hard time grasping my head around this is a better idea for something else. What do you think about meditation? Have you? Oh, don't start with that. Hey, the only significance meditations ever had for me was that thing with that. Here comes Dirk all the way at the tail end, all the way at the literally the. I actually went a minute beyond what I was scheduling for. I am going to cut this off very shortly though, partly because my hand is getting tired and also yeah VVS that is the only time meditations ever mattered to me. What do I think about God? Uh, I like to believe that exists, or that He exists, or uh, I was actually told at one point just to say God, that higher deity is a reality. But my idea of Him is different from a number of Christians, and we've actually had some disagreements over that. So now I'm very worried about Dirk. I know he's so disappointed to get this. He wasn't here from the beginning. If I had Dirk's phone number, I'd send him a detailed memo of the upcoming stream every time. Who is your ideal? You know, that's been. I'll put it to you this way: me discussing my ideal that would be like me discussing a unicorn, or rather, me discussing a. There's a way to compare it. Basically, I believe that person exists, but they're not reciprocating to because I've actually seen people that have met that idea, and they're just not reciprocating to what I have to offer. So, who hasn't been ran through? No, Max. Where's that question even come from? What does that have to do with anything, MLG? Okay, now we're getting raided by all kind of random inquiries. People are evidently really, 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 really bored. They don't. I like Coca Cola. Yeah, I'm a fan of all of those different sodas. Okay, what else is here? Oh, the worst part about doing those food streams, you start talking about what kind of foods you like. You'll always have one person come in there. I don't know if they're. I don't. I'd like to not think that they are. Elliot. I could be wrong. We'll find out. The one problem with the food streams is that you always have someone that comes on there and tries to play elitist and go, well, there are toxins relating to this. There are things relating to that. I said, look, most things we eat are not healthy for us. Most things we do are not healthy for us. So I don't. That's kind of a sore spot in terms of do I just want to speak entirely about this? Okay, what else is here? And we're gonna have Elliot issue a formal apology for calling people that. Yeah, strict. Oh, I'm not sure I can agree to that sentiment, Trek. So I'm gonna have to issue some doubts. No, it's all right, Elliot. We're very we're very forgiving. So I am going to see you later. I'll definitely have something out tomorrow. Probably not as long because of reasons. Um, but definitely in that same ballpark of just general topics. I mean, hold up. It's the end of this. You better type whatever you want to type very quickly. Pull out the put the keyboard in the hyperdrive. Yeah, the answer to that max is whenever I can Wednesday. So see you later and have a good day.